love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hi, everyone. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Carden, and this week I am very excited for my guest, Gwen Wilcox. Gwen is a true expert in the branding space, and I'm really excited for her to share with you what she has today because let's face it, building a brand in the marketplace today is a non-negotiable. You absolutely have to do it, and she's going to share some deep secrets with you and some techniques with you that you may not have ever heard. So I'm excited to have you here, Gwen. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. And I'm a big fan of Anne's. I've watched her, a couple of her workshops, and she's excellent at what she does. So you're lucky to be in her company.
Well, thank you so much. Well, we are going to jump right in, and I'm going to let everyone tell you, first of all, you are a branding coach, but I love that one of the things that you told me is you lead with positive psychology. So we're going to dive into that because that is interesting. So why don't you just tell us, I know you've got all this background and expertise. How did you get to where you are right now? Just share that background and what brought you to this place.
Okay, we're going to do the express train story on this.
There we go.
Yeah, so I grew up actually in the retail environment. My mother worked for Saks Fifth Avenue when Saks Fifth Avenue was, very exclusive. And so my first entree into the experience of a brand was very visceral. And I got to experience that from the shipping and receiving room all the way to the salon. And so that sort of embedded in me that sense of belonging and excitement about a brand. And no matter what Saks did over the years, in my mind, when I walk through the doors, it's still the same thing. So it was really indelible to me, and being part of something like that, being so personal. I thought I was going to go into retail, actually, because I had a very natural gift in selling, and I would sell through story. Don't ask me even how I did that, but I did.
Now that's really a thing.
It's really a thing. And I'll tell you a really quick, because this is a little bit, I'll tell my story while I do a teaching moment. I was what they called a flyer. And so they put me wherever there was a lack, or if somebody was going on break, they would say, "Oh, Gwen, can you go over to this department and just fill in?" So I knew a little bit about everything and not a lot about one thing. And this one particular day, I was put in the jewelry, across from the jewelry department with small leather goods. And at that time, that was wallets and attaché cases. And this gentleman, I saw him come in the revolving door. He was racing, like running really quickly. He had a trench coat and it was flapping open. And he yelled about 30 feet away towards me, and he pointed to an attaché case that was up above on display. And he said, "I want that, wrap it up, gift wrap it. I got to go." And I was just, okay. And I just said, well, as I'm doing, and I said, "Well, how'd you decide on that?" And blah, 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 blah. And he said, "Oh, my wife told me she wants that." And I said, "Oh, for what? Her birthday, anniversary?" "Oh, it's her birthday." And he's just being really, really impatient. And I said, "Oh." And he said, why do you say that? And I said, "Well, it's not much of a surprise. What if you went and got a diamond bracelet and put it in a box inside of it? And then you would just be the best husband ever." He's like, "Oh my God, what a great idea." So he went and bought a $3,000 bracelet. We put it inside the $6,000. It was because it was I think it was a alligator attaché case. And he came back 2 weeks later and he said, I just want to thank you. I mean, who comes back into a store just to say thank you?
Especially when he was in that big of a hurry.
He was. And he just said, oh my God, I'm set for the next 10 years with my wife. He said, she just couldn't believe it. And
Filled that emotional bank account.
He really, and it was, and I didn't do that for the commission. I didn't do it for any other reason than I thought I would be so bummed out that I would just know what I was getting. So anyway, that was sort of the beginning of the sort of, in my mind, what I call the aspirational selling or the story selling. Like, who do you want, what do you want to achieve in the feeling, either when you purchase something or if you're trying to sell something. So fast forward, I was also very good in art, and I ended up having to make this decision. And I actually was studying psychology too. And then I happened to meet somebody who went to Art Center College of Design and said, you should go there. I applied, I got in, I was scared to death because everyone else there had a precursor, had already graduated from someplace else with a degree. And I didn't have one, but it apparently was a gift of mine. And then I I immediately, after graduation, went to New York City. And I was the only one from my class who went there. And I did a lot of research and was very, very selective about where I applied. I wanted to work for the best. And I did end up working for the best. And they taught me everything that I know now. I didn't know they were trailblazers, but I got to work with Hal Riney, who was probably the most successful storyteller in the advertising space ever. He almost single-handedly got Ronald Reagan reelected in his second because of a commercial he did. So
very cool.
So anyway, so that's how that all started. And then I pivoted from offline to online just a few years ago as a result of a fire, actually. I think I told Anne this story. Yeah, I was living in Southern Oregon, and there was a fire that erupted on September 8th, 2020, that decimated 2 cities in a matter of 2.5 hours. And so I had to reinvent myself. So I just want you all to know it's possible, no matter what your age, no matter what your background. You take your cumulative knowledge and you put it out there.
There's a big lesson here for everyone. And you are never too old to reinvent yourself. Never. So
nope. And not ever. Yeah.
So that is how you are doing what you're doing today. Now, you did share a little bit of a story with me that you didn't talk about. I want to bring that up. What was the big logo that you were part of?
Oh, yeah.
That was so well known, and everyone will know what this is. So your claim to fame here, Gwen.
My claim to fame is, and this is a lesson I teach with my clients and other folks, is our biggest fear is when an opportunity comes and we're not ready. So I guarantee you an opportunity is going to come that is going to scare the bejesus out of you, and take it anyway. And that was what happened to me. I just happened to be working late one night for a design firm, answered the phone. A woman by the name of Jane Weitzman was on the other end of the phone. And she was looking for someone to help her husband, Stuart Weitzman, launch his own brand. And my boss thought the project would be too small for him. And I asked him if I could take it. And that launched my own company. And it also launched the brand of Stuart Weitzman. Mm-hmm. And that brand identity that I launched for him went unchanged for 33 and a half years. And the only reason they went through a slight change was when Coach acquired them. Mm-hmm. I think it was in 2014 for 400, or was it 500 and some odd $1 million. They used to want to pay me in shoes when I first started.
That wouldn't be be so bad.
I should have said yes. Who knew?
Spoken like a true woman.
I know. But I mean, so yeah, so what I want to say to everyone is, it wasn't about hex colors, or it wasn't about the logo. We told a story, and Stuart started out primarily designing bridal shoes. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, that's how he proposed to his wife. He designed a pair of shoes for her and presented them. Aww. And that's how he proposed to her. So what I came up with was the story about, well, how does a woman feel on her wedding day? She feels like a princess. She feels like royalty, right? It's like her crowning, right? Mm-hmm. It's her moment. So I did a lot of research into royalty and the colors that were used. And I came up with this periwinkle color because in royal fabrics, and if you were to uncover, treasures out of a tomb right now, and there was this periwinkle color, it never fades. Thousands of years later, it never fades. Yes,
that's interesting.
Yeah, the vibration and saturation of the color does not erode over time. So I thought, well, let's take this periwinkle, and it was derived from these odd sea insects. Mm-hmm. So even each royal blue color was different from garment to garment. So this is the story I told them, that this is what it should be, that this will become as signature to Sir Weitzman as the turquoise box is to Tiffany. And that's exactly what happened. So it was really, really well thought out. He liked that association with his brand, because he wanted each woman to feel like, that was her moment. Mm-hmm. And so the only reason why it was changed is because a lot of times when a company's acquire another one, they like to put their stamp on it. Right. I don't think that they've done it justice, but they've used a typeface that actually, to me, is reminiscent of Yves Saint Laurent in the 70s. They may not know that, but... but anyway,
an opportunity there for you.
Yeah, so it's like, did you know?
Right.
Yeah. So that sort of launched a lot of things, and it's taught me a lesson that you always want to plan for what you aspire to be. Mm-hmm. Don't just do good enough for where you are now. It's what do you want the perception of your brand to be down the road, and do that now.
Yes.
Because the more you believe it now, you don't have to fear stepping into it later. And you won't have to negotiate your pricing, because it will be understood. It will be, self-evident.
Sounds like you're saying do it right the first time, so you don't have to change it down the road.
I worked with a woman who used to say, there's never enough time to do it right, but there's certainly a lot of time to do it over. And
yes. Right. Yeah. That's true. That is true.
Yep.
So very cool. So I love this. So who do you mostly work with at this stage in your business? Who are your best customers or your best clients?
My best clients are CEOs, consultants, and coaches. And when I say CEOs, that can be from anywhere from a corporate, like large tier, probably I would say 400 million, revenue on up, to I love working with entrepreneurs just because they're such visionaries.
Right.
But I like to work with people who are at least established about 4 years in, because that way we know they have some traction, they understand the value, and they're ready to expand. They're ready to level up. And that's kind of the scariest time, because you're still thinking solopreneur, but you really need to think greater than that.
Absolutely.
So, and that's usually when they need either to raise capital, or they're getting ready to look at some sort of advisory board. And when you're pitching to angel investors or looking for an advisory board, they want to know that you understand your differentiation.
Yes. It's a huge factor. Yes.
And I find that most people have the articulation of your differentiation is the hardest thing. And those of you who are listening who've attempted to do your value statement or
Right.
the I
It's
help
hard
statement,
to do for yourself. Yes.
it's hard to do for yourself. I struggle with it as well. When you've had 35 plus years experience, it's just a much longer sentence. But, I just don't want anyone to feel that they should get it right the first time. One of my favorite books is by Howard Gardner. I'm gonna show it up because it happened to see it right here, called Frames of Mind, and it's the theory of multiple intelligences. And one of the intelligences is linguistic. And one of the examples they'll show in the book is a stanza that a poet, and I can't remember which poet it is right now, but they will show the stanza in each iteration and how this one word keeps getting changed. And then when the word is spot on, it's like, oh,
that's it.
That's it. Oh my God, that's it.
Yes.
And that's like, I call it sort of like the cosmic chiropractic, when you feel aligned with your own brand, it's sort of like you sit up straighter, you feel like, wow, you really step into it.
You do know, you do. It's
annoying, but it may go through a lot of iterations. And I just happen to accelerate that. That's why I say that I solve immediate business identity and brand strategy solutions, because it feels immediate when you're stuck there.
Yes.
Because it affects your messaging.
Everything.
Your brand tone. It affects how you derive your brand identity. And it affects how you resonate with your audience, because you can be out there with a megaphone talking over here, but your audience is really over here, but you're talking to the wrong people.
Right. Yeah. I love that you're talking about this. I mean, both of us do. I don't do it to the level you do. You do the graphic piece of it and all of that. I don't do that, but we both are very heavy into helping people with their personal brands, because it is the foundation for their entire business. If they get that part wrong, and I see it over and over, in fact, most of my clients, that's where they are, or it's only got them so far in their business. If they get that wrong, it really holds them back. They get stuck. They don't make the money that they can. They just, everything feels like a struggle and a push. You're pushing that boulder up the hill. So I totally understand what you're saying.
One example, I worked with these entrepreneurs. They were small. I think they had been sort of struggling for about 3.5 years. They were barely covering their operating costs. So they weren't able to pay themselves yet. And they had this great product called salinity salts. And if you looked on their site, they did it themselves. It looked, I'm going to say, very encyclopedic. Like if you looked up salinity salts and they got a definition, that's what it was. So it was very sort of not antiseptic, but lacking of any personality. And I looked at the back end to see what the problem was. And I saw that the bounce rate, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's when you look at the back end of any website and you can look through the analytics and you can see which page somebody left your site. So that is very informative data. And what we saw over and over again is 60% rate, which is very high. A good bounce rate or acceptable is 30% or lower. But there was 60 and above. They were bouncing off on their product page. That immediately told me that people were interested, but when they got to see what the price of the product was, it was disproportionate to what their perception was based on how the brand was presented. So the first thing we needed to fix is it was being perceived at this level, right? They were communicating here, they were communicating here. So the price level was here. We took them up to here with the pricing here, so that when somebody came in, they were like, oh, but then when they got the product page, it's like, oh, not so bad. Right. So we immediately, so when we redid this and presented a personality, what we saw was an increase in the time people spent on it. We found that they were actually on their page for 4 minutes or longer on the about page, where there was nothing to sell. They were reading, they were engaged, they felt it was compelling.
Yes.
And so from there, we were actually able to convert unique visitors, which means visitors who's never been there. We had a 12% conversion. So 12% of people who had never been to the site before would buy.
That's amazing. Good for you. I love that. And it is such an important piece that I know people say, oh, raise your prices. Well, if your brand doesn't look like you can raise your prices. If your brand doesn't look like you can warrant those prices, you're never going to get them. And this is a lot of times why people struggle to get the pricing that they want, or they say, well, I'm not getting the right people. It's because their brand is off, or it's incongruent with their pricing and with everything that they're selling. And the two have to be absolutely aligned. You are 100%.
Right. And I know you and I have talked about this before, because Anna's the queen of pricing strategy. I swear to God, she has it nailed down. So if you haven't had a chat with her about that, please do. But one of the things that I help my clients do is, a lot of people think if they're going to provide another product, and I'll go back to that salinity salts example for a minute, because it'll be easier to wrap your head around. They have these finishing salts. It's not to cook with. You put them on after, which change the flavor. So one of the things we did was a tester. We took this one soup recipe, same soup, and put different salts on it when they would taste it at the farmer's market, and they all tasted completely different.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. So we wanted to I said, you need to attract the male market now, because they like to grill. So let's do grilling salts. And they got all overwhelmed, like, oh no, now we got to create that. Oh, no. You take the same ingredients, you put it in a different shape.
Put a new marketing strategy behind it.
And you just call it something else. Yeah. And they were, so I think a lot of people think that when they're going to, raise their prices or do a new offering, that you have to reinvent it. And I don't know if you feel this way. And what I do is I say, well, what can we do that we can deconstruct? You can do an introductory thing here and kind of test that. And then as you expand it, that's when you just rename it.
Right.
Then you can charge differently for it.
Yes.
You can keep that other thing, because the person who's going to buy that thing at that lower price is not going to be the same person who's going to buy it over here. But you don't have to create all new content.
You actually bring up a good point, and a lot of people probably don't know this, and you could say this with multiple things, but a lot of people don't realize that cosmetic lines are created in the same lab for a lot of different brands and a lot of different lines, and these brands just put their labels on it, but you're getting the same cosmetics sometimes that you are in a high-end department store as the same thing you are getting at Walmart with the higher end brands. And a lot of people don't realize that. Yes.
That was my biggest lesson when I was working with the Weitzmans. We decided to roll out a packaging for pantyhose. Do you know that there are only 3 mills in the United States?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know
3.
That. Doesn't surprise me.
So you could be buying the cheapest brand is made at the same mill, the exact same fibers as Donna Karen's, but there's a $20 price difference.
No, that's true. And actually, I mean, we could go on and on about this, because you and I know we talked about this. I came from 13 years in retail management in high-end department stores as well. And that was one of the similarities that you and I shared when we first got on a call. And it was really funny to talk about that. But even your simple lotions that are a traditional brand, like what's the brand that everyone everyone knows, and I cannot think of it now, but they've also come out with a diabetic lotion. It's the same lotion. It's just they repackaged it and they called it something different. And they made it look like a specialty lotion. It's the same stuff.
I know.
And people just don't realize that.
They don't know. And for the men out there, same thing with paint. The only two paint companies that make their own resin and as I think it's titanium. So the only resin and titanium is Dunn Edwards and Benjamin Moore. The rest of them are bought from the same sort of marketing thing, like Behr paint in Home Depot is somebody else's formula with a label slapped on it. Same with Sherman-Williams and all of that. So do you want true, what is that? IP, intellectual property or true paint is Benjamin Moore. That's why it lasts longer. Yeah. The resin and the titanium, the color, but I didn't know that either until I had a Benjamin Moore client. So
that's interesting. One of the things that the reason personal branding or branding for any kind of company is so important is because we are so visually driven. And we are that type of, humans are visually driven anyway. Yeah. But I think in the United States, I think we're even worse. We are very status driven, very ego driven, very visually driven. And so personal brand has never been more important, I think, that it is in the marketplace today. I've never seen personal branding be so dominant, really, in marketing and in the marketplace as it is today. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And I just did just getting ready to do a post. I don't think I've edited it yet about where branding is now versus where it was pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we were all about high consumption, hyper consumption, and hyper, status. Post or during pandemic and post pandemic, we are hyper aware. This is more being an empathic brand now than consumption brand.
That's interesting. That's an interesting,
So what you're selling is not to demographic. You're selling more to psychographic or emotional graphic.
Yeah, emotional.
In other words, what is the aspirational feeling someone wants to attain? At the really basic, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, it's about safety, right? Belonging, and protection, feeling like what you have, because people are feeling really out of control. So they want things that they can rely on. So I think more than ever, customer experience, you have to deliver way higher than you used to. You have to have more immediate response. You have to be more driven to the uniqueness of the individual. So your messaging has to be full of caring. No more FOMO. If anybody's listening to this, no more fear of missing out, because you know what? People are going to associate your brand with the emotion that you're eliciting from them. And if you are evoking fear in them, you are a fearful brand.
That's a really interesting point. But the more I think about that, that is so true. People are so over that. We've gone through enough, right? Enough of the fear and enough of all the things in the last few years. And so, yes, I think what you are saying, it makes so much sense. I hadn't really thought about that because I don't work branding the way you do, but that is such an important analysis, really, of what's going on.
And I think it peaked, this FOMO thing. Remember when we couldn't get toilet paper when the pandemic started?
Oh, yes. We remember.
So I think a lot of brands, and oh, by the way, just a little side, why were all the Kleenex shelves still full? Did people not think that they could use facial tissue for the other end? Anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Just would go over to the facial tissue aisle. But in any case, I think that I think a lot of brands took advantage of that fear-basedness. Like if I don't go and get it now, or, like I said, hyper consumption. If I don't go get it now, then I'm going to miss out. I never will.
Right.
Somebody will get there before me.
You're describing the media.
Yeah. And now it's, if you listen, everybody listen to, if you're watching cable, listen to the commercials now. It's way different.
Mm-hmm. Very toned down.
Even car commercials, it's not about performance driven or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It's now quiet, having time alone, being at peace, being safe. It's completely different.
Well, we know whenever the pendulum swings this way, it's got to eventually come back. And I think that's really what we experienced. It took a pandemic to do that, but I think that's a lot of what we experienced is that things seem to get so out of balance for a long time that I think it was time for things to swing back to, I don't even like to say a new normal. I read the other day new realities, and I think that's a more accurate assessment of where we are now. And
I think niching down is even more because people are going to get more selective.
Yes.
They're viewing their time as currency.
Yes.
Not just currency as currency.
Correct.
And I told this story the other day, and I'll tell it here. When my son started his freshman year in college, he asked me this question that I didn't know how to answer it. He said, "Mom, how much time does it take to make friends?" And I was like, wow. So of course I wanted to give a really thoughtful answer. So I Googled it. Right? And there just happened to be 3 months earlier, a study done by the University of Kansas about how much time it took to cultivate a friendship. And it said, you need a minimum of 20 hours, I think, or more to create a connection, 60 hours or more to be a friend, to call someone a friend. So casual is 20 hours, 60 hours or more friend, and a good friend is 100 plus hours.
That's interesting.
And that's meaningful engagement.
That's interesting. I don't know if I agree with the 20-hour thing. I think the rest of it makes sense. I don't know if I agree with the 20-hour thing. I have made some incredible you and I, for example.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it depends upon how chatty you are and if you're
That's right.
Which is
there is that. If you have the gift of gab and you But yeah, so I guess when I look at myself, I feel like I make connection way faster than that. But the other does make sense, the 60.
But you're making meaningful connections. So you used us as an example, right? When we first met, we had all of these things in common.
That's true.
And that immediately puts it a little bit further ahead because
that's a good point. Yeah,
I understand this person has this understanding that I do. We have this interest in common. We had a triplet thing in common. We had there's different things. So you go, oh, this person is more like me. They're kind of in that club.
Right.
But think about all the times you've sat next to someone on an airplane, right? There is a connection. You build trust there. That person would trust you maybe to give their personal information, like maybe an email or a phone number, but they're not going to really buy anything from you yet. Right. They might not travel to see you in another state.
That's true.
Right. So you've still made that connection, and an average flight is 2.5 to 4 hours, right?
Right.
If you meet in the waiting area and then you sit, wherever. So you kind of think about that, what kind of conversations you have. And we tend to have our guard down because there's that safety net of, well, I'm never going to see this person again. So I can share a little bit more. And you ever notice you never know their name until you're getting
ready to get off.
So, by the way, what was your name? So I think, so I always use that as an example that, somebody's going to connect with you on LinkedIn and then they send you a DM, a direct message, and says, hey, do you want to buy my program? I'm feeling like you didn't even invest. I'm not important enough to you to invest in getting to know me.
Yeah.
You have a very outside reality expectation.
Yep.
You know, and I'd rather connect with somebody who's just really honest. Like somebody today said, you know, I'm just looking to expand my network. I found your profile interesting. I said yes to that before somebody who wrote this long thing, because I don't want to have a transactional relationship.
Yeah. Yes. Nope. That is all relevant. That's important. So I love it. Gosh, I can't believe the time is flying.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
I can't believe it. So, okay. So very quickly.
Yeah. What tips?
First of all, you can clearly see that she knows what she's doing when she's talking about branding. She's got many years since 1986, I think. Is that right?
Actually, 1984 is
1984.
When I started.
Okay. So that's pretty amazing, right? That she's been doing it all these years. So she definitely is a specialist and an expert in this area. But I do want to talk about one thing, because we know that you dig in and you really pull out what people want their brand to be, and you tell the story behind it. And you've kind of shared some of those things. But you talked about something that I want to just dive into for a moment. Yeah. And you talked about something you call Rock-Paper-Scissors Motivators. And we didn't get into it, but I'm super curious about this. So can you, in a minute, talk about that?
So I'm a divergent thinker. And so when I'm in any situation, I will look at the big picture, and I will look at, gee, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this. And I worked in a corporate environment that did not appreciate that. And I was asked to please stop having ideas. And so if you can imagine. And so because I need to create, I started to observe. And what I observed that, I'm going to use Anne as an example. Anne would come into the room and present a new concept or new product to a room full of people on a Monday. It's in the same room with all these people. And then now she's being asked to present it to another, I should say, not stockholders or shareholders, but, people who maybe another division. So she'll come in Wednesday, same place, saying the same pitch. And now something's gone wrong. There's some contention. She's being challenged by someone. So I started to notice how the people sat in the room, how they started their sentences, who spoke up first, all of these things. And I kept making these observations, and I sort of thought of this idea of the game rock, paper, scissors, where paper covers rock and scissors cut paper, and, two rocks, cancel each other out, and so on and so forth. So I started to categorize people as rocks or papers or scissors based on how they interacted. And I started to write and notice and make observations about what behaviors kept repeating until I got to a 99.8% predictability. And then I created a quiz based on that to identify if you're a rock, paper, scissor. And it's not just what you are primarily, but what you are secondary and the third.
Oh my gosh. Okay. What am I? Am I a rock, a paper?
Oh, you're a rock.
I am?
I think, you have a rock with a lot of scissor. So a rock will be, I can tell by the way you're sitting. So if you notice that
I know
Anne is sitting very, very forward. That's what rocks do. Their bodies are usually in contact with, and it's almost like they're listening with their forehead. So they take it all in. They process quickly. They're usually the first one to speak up. They're usually the person, I have a question. Or why, they'll say, well, why? So if that's true, why not this? They're a little bit of not combative, but they'll challenge, because to challenge creates their performance motivator is to create and ideate. So they will look for an opportunity, like double jump rope, when to jump in, where that generator is going to get them going. Right.
Interesting.
So they are perceived externally as, oh my God, attention grabbing, or they might be perceived as sort of bossy or always taking charge, but really what they're doing is they need that engagement. They need somebody else to bounce off of, right?
Interesting.
And so they're the one in the room that speaks up first. The scissors in the rooms are the one that are sort of leaning back a little bit. They usually have some body part engaged with the table, but they're sort of leaning back and they're waiting their turn. They usually will have to be asked to speak up. And what they do is they assess. Their primary motivator is to be of service. They want to make sure that they're always observing. They want to make sure everyone is comfortable. Is everyone, oh, so-and-so over there, their glass is half emptied. Can somebody get them water? They're kind of looking over things. The paper in the room is the one that's sitting back there a little bit. They're curved like this, and they've got a bubble over their head that says, please don't call on me.
Yes, that's not me.
Okay, no. But they are the most misunderstood because I call them the perennial protector. They are like the eagle that sees all the territories and where, oh my gosh, we've got the dry lake bed over there and there's water coming and there's going to be a flood. They're the consummate anticipators.
Oh my goodness.
So, but they communicate as if they're a pessimist. No, that's not going to work. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough resource. And so I teach papers how to reframe their concerns as questions, because then that engages the rock to come up. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. So there's this whole thing. So those of you who would love to take the quiz, you can find that on my website. Let me see.
Well, I don't need to. You already told me what I am.
Yeah. But if anybody's curious,
that was super interesting. We did not dive into that when we talked earlier. And so that is super interesting. But I love how all of these things are pieces of what you really do to build people's brand, to help people build their brand out so that it's really aligned with who they are and what they want and where they're going. So all of that is a piece of what you do.
And that dynamic, understanding that dynamic is unlike other personality tests where you have to know what someone is. I can teach you how to recognize it in less than a minute so that if you're selling to someone who's a paper, you're a rock, you sell by feeling. A paper does not value feelings as much as facts and data. So the more you press, well, you're going to feel this way, the more they're going to be peppy le pewing, backpedaling because, you're making me feel something and I don't want to, right?
Interesting.
So if you know that ahead of time, you know what points to touch on that are going to resonate with them. Otherwise, you're going to try to be negotiating, then you're going to try to be deal making, and now you've really put them off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love it. I know we could talk forever.
I know. Let's do another episode.
This has been so great. It's been so great. So Gwen, how can people get a hold of you and find out about your programs and what you have to offer? And then also, so do you have a free session or something that you would like to offer my listeners to engage with you or to take that next step with you? What would that be?
Absolutely. So for your listeners alone, I can offer what I call an essence audit, a 30-minute essence audit. And they can go to, let's see, it's a Calendly link. And
we'll put it with the show notes. So,
okay, great. So in the show notes,
yes.
There will be a Calendly link that will take you to an Essence audit scheduling, and there will be a download there for you to fill out this questionnaire called Brand Marrow, your essence down to the bone. And I will do an overview, and you'll get a little taste of sort of what your true mission, your unexpressed joys, and your fear motivators are. And those are, I know that doesn't sound very magnetic, but a lot of us are repressing some fears that actually gives us an indicator of who we should be serving. And then on the notes, you can also get a link to the quiz if you're curious. And anyone can schedule a free strategy session with me so we can dive into sort of where they feel their blocks are and where they need immediate brand identity help.
Cool. Cool. Well, thank you so much for offering that. This has been so much fun having you on. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and just really giving value to my audience. And I always love the really conversational podcast too, where we just have some fun and good things come out of that, right? Like you all didn't know that the same brand, the different brands are using the same products. So we shared that with you today. This has been great, Gwen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really fun. A highlight of my day. Thank you.
Awesome. And everyone, thank you so much for being here again for another episode. God bless you. Have an amazing week. And we will talk to you next time. Bye-bye. If you've enjoyed this episode, I want to invite you to go check out a free training that I have at expertinu.us. It is a training that I have on how you can get ultra premium dream clients, scale your business, get more freedom, and really simplify your business and multiply your money. So go check that out. And again, that is expertinu.us. I want to thank you for being here with me this week. I hope you found massive value. Please always leave a comment, feedback, or a question. We check them all. And I want you to go rock your business and make sure you join us again next week. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.